Everyone's watching the highlights right now. The throws, the clips, the viral moments, they're everywhere. But what if I told you the most important part of this story isn't what you're seeing, it's what you're not? Because behind all the noise, behind the debates, and behind the constant comparisons, something very different is happening. This isn't just a young quarterback getting better. This is a complete shift in mindset, and that's the part people keep missing. While everyone else is arguing online, throwing opinions around, and questioning whether he's really that guy, he's gone quiet. No back and forth, no explanations, just work, real work, the kind that doesn't show up in headlines but changes everything when the season starts. And that's where things start to get dangerous. Because when a player stops trying to prove people wrong and starts building something in silence, that's when the entire conversation flips. That's when doubt turns into fuel. That's when preparation turns into results. Right now, it feels like most people still think this is just another off-season story, another player training, another wave of hype, but this doesn't feel like hype. It feels different. It feels like something is coming. And if what's happening behind the scenes is as real as it looks, then the rest of the league might not be ready for what's about to unfold. At some point, everything just went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people stop talking about you, but the kind where you stop talking back. And that's exactly what's happening here. No more responses to critics. No more reacting to every headline, every take, every debate, just silence and work. And that shift, that's bigger than anything you're seeing on social media. Because before this, there was always noise around him. People questioning his talent, debating his level, comparing him to other quarterbacks, picking apart every performance. And most players get caught in that cycle. They respond, they explain, they try to prove people wrong with words. But now that's gone. What you're seeing instead is someone who's locked in completely differently. The clips coming out aren't just random workouts, they're controlled, intentional, and repetitive. That basement setup, that's not just for show. Turf on the ground, tight throwing windows, constant reps with no distractions, that's a message. It's saying this is no longer about proving anything to anyone. This is about building something that speaks for itself. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because when a player reaches that point, when they stop chasing validation and start focusing only on execution, that's when the real jump happens. That's when improvement stops being small and starts becoming noticeable to everyone. You can even see it in the details. The body language feels calmer, the movements look sharper, there's no rush, no panic, just control, and that confidence, it's not loud, it's not forced, it's built. That's the difference people aren't catching yet. Most are still looking at this like it's just off-season content, just another athlete training, just another wave of clips going viral, but this feels more intentional than that, more focused, more serious. Because silence like this usually means one thing, something is being prepared. And the craziest part? While everyone else is still debating whether he can take that next step, he's already moving like someone who's past that question completely. But this kind of mindset doesn't just appear out of nowhere, it comes from something. It didn't start in the off-season, it started when everything was going wrong. Because if you really go back and look at last season, it wasn't clean. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't the kind of situation where a quarterback gets to sit back, scan the field, and make perfect throws. It was chaos. Pressure coming from everywhere, protection breaking down, hits stacking up week after week. And that's the part people gloss over. Most quarterbacks don't survive that, not mentally, not physically. When you're constantly getting hit, constantly forced to adjust, constantly playing under stress, it wears on you. Confidence starts to crack. Decision-making gets rushed. You start playing careful instead of playing free. But that's not what happened here. Instead of folding, he stayed in it, took the hits, got back up, and kept delivering. And that kind of experience does something to a player. It forces growth whether you're ready or not. It strips everything down to the basics: focus, toughness, discipline. And once you go through that, something changes. Because now you're not guessing what pressure feels like, you've lived it. You're not wondering how you'll respond in tough situations. You already know that fear most players have, it starts to disappear. And that's where things start to shift. Because a quarterback who's been through chaos and came out of it still standing doesn't play the same anymore. He plays faster, more confident, more decisive, not because the game slowed down, but because nothing on the field feels overwhelming anymore. And you can see the effects of that right now. The footwork looks tighter, the release looks quicker, the movements look more controlled. That's not random improvement, that's someone who went back, studied everything, and made a decision that won't happen again. He's not just fixing mistakes, he's building on top of them. And that's what makes this dangerous. Because when you combine real experience under pressure with intentional improvement, you don't just get a better player, you get a completely different one. Someone who's not reacting anymore, but anticipating. But here's the thing, while all of this is happening, while that growth is taking place, a lot of people are still looking at the surface, still treating this like it's just potential. And that's where the disconnect begins. Something changed, and you can see it if you're really paying attention. This isn't just about getting better physically, this is deeper than that, because the biggest jump he's making right now isn't in his arm, it's in his mindset, and that's the kind of change that flips everything. You can tell he's not playing the same game mentally anymore. There's no hesitation in the way he moves, no second guessing in the way he releases the ball. Everything looks more controlled, more intentional, like every rep has a purpose behind it. That doesn't come from talent, that comes from clarity. And clarity only shows up after you've been through something. Because now he's not trying to figure things out on the fly. He's already seen the chaos. He's already dealt with pressure, hits, and broken plays, so instead of reacting late, he's anticipating early. That's a completely different level of quarterback. And once a player reaches that point, the game starts to open up in a way most people don't understand. Reads get quicker, decisions get sharper. Movements get tighter, it's not flashy, it's efficient. And efficient is what separates good from elite. But here, where it gets even more serious. He's not just correcting weaknesses, he's stacking improvements on top of them. Fixing footwork, tightening mechanics, speeding up release, all while building confidence at the same time. That combination is rare. Because most players improve in one area and plateau in another. But this looks like everything is leveling up together. And when that happens, the jump isn't gradual, it's sudden. That's what people aren't ready for. They're still viewing him through an old lens, still thinking about what he was instead of recognizing what he's becoming. And that gap between perception and reality, that's where the biggest surprises happen. Because by the time most people realize the change is real, it's already too late to debate it. And the wild part is, while all of this growth is happening, the outside noise hasn't stopped. The comparisons, the doubts, the conversations, they're still there. But now, they don't seem to matter anymore. Because this version of him isn't reacting to any of it. He's not chasing validation. He's not trying to win arguments. He's building something bigger than that. And if this mindset carries over when the lights come on, then everything people think they know right now is about to be tested in real time. But while all of this is happening, the outside noise hasn't slowed down at all. If anything, it's gotten louder. There are still comparisons being thrown around, still debates happening every single day. Names getting brought up, arguments being made, people trying to frame this like it's some close competition. And one of the biggest ones floating around right now is the comparison to Ty Simpson. And look, on the surface, that might sound like a real conversation. But when you actually step back and look at it, it starts to feel a little off. Because one player has already been tested under real pressure, already taken hits, already dealt with chaos, already shown he can stay on the field and still produce. And the other, there are still questions. Questions about consistency, about durability, about how that performance translates when things aren't perfect. That matters more than people want to admit. Because in the NFL, it's not about how you look in ideal situations, it's about what you do when everything breaks down. And that's where the separation quietly starts to show. But here, where things get even more interesting. There have been subtle signals behind the scenes that not everyone is catching. Reports suggest that certain decision makers are already leaning a certain way. Small things like who shows up to what events, who gets more attention, where the focus seems to be shifting. Nothing loud, nothing officially confirmed. But patterns are there if you're paying attention. And then you've got analysts stepping in, adding fuel to the conversation. Not fans, not random opinions, but respected voices putting their perspective out there, suggesting that this might not even be as close as people think. Now suddenly, it's not just debate, it's pressure. Because when those kinds of opinions start stacking up, expectations shift. The spotlight gets brighter, every move gets watched a little closer. But here's the twist. None of that seems to be affecting him at all. No reactions, no responses, no energy wasted trying to prove anyone wrong. While all these conversations are happening around him, he's doing the exact opposite, staying locked in, staying quiet, and just stacking work. And that's what makes this different. Because most players get pulled into that noise, they respond, they engage, they let it become personal. But this feels controlled, intentional. Like he already knows something everyone else is still trying to figure out. And if that's the case, then all these debates happening right now might not age very well. And this is where the entire situation starts to shift, because now it's not just about him anymore, it's about where he's going. The biggest thing people keep overlooking is the environment. Up to this point, he hasn't exactly been operating under perfect conditions. Protection issues, constant pressure, plays breaking down before they even had a chance to develop. He's been dealing with that consistently. And still, he found ways to produce. That alone should tell you something. Because most quarterbacks need stability to succeed. Clean pockets, structured systems, time to read the field, take that away and everything falls apart. But here, even without those advantages, there were still flashes, still moments that made people stop and think. Now flip that situation. What happens if he actually gets protection? What happens if the offensive line holds up, if the pocket stays clean, if he's not running for his life every other play? That's where things start to get serious. Because suddenly you're not just looking at potential anymore, you're looking at unlocked potential. And it feels like the front office is starting to recognize that. Reports suggest there's been a clear focus on improving protection, investing in the line, and building a more stable structure around the quarterback position. Not loud moves, not headline-grabbing decisions, but strategic ones. The kind that matter over time. Because fixing the offensive line doesn't just help a little, it changes everything. It gives the quarterback time, it opens up the playbook, it allows the offense to actually function the way it's designed to. And for someone like him, that could be the missing piece. Because if everything we've already seen came under pressure, then what happens when that pressure is reduced? That's the question nobody has a clear answer to yet. And that's exactly why this situation feels different. Because now it's not just about development, it's about alignment. Talent, mindset, and situation all starting to come together at the same time. And when that happens in the NFL, things don't stay quiet for long, they explode. And this is where everything starts to come together, because now it's not just about him improving, it's about what's forming around him. You can feel the shift. It's subtle, but it's there. Reports suggest that certain players around the league are starting to pay attention, quietly watching what's being built. And when that happens, it's usually not random. Players recognize patterns before fans do. They notice work ethic, leadership, direction. And right now, those signals are starting to line up. Take the potential addition of someone like Carnell Tate, a receiver who doesn't just rely on speed but understands how to move, how to create separation, how to actually elevate an offense. That kind of piece next to a quarterback like this, that's not just a weapon, that's balance. Because now defenses can't focus on one thing, now there are options, layers. Pressure coming from different angles. And that's how offenses start becoming dangerous. But it goes deeper than just personnel. Inside the locker room, something else is building trust. Because when teammates see a quarterback putting in that level of work, staying consistent, showing up every day locked in, it changes how they respond. Linemen block harder, receivers run sharper routes. Everyone starts buying into the same vision. And that's not something you can fake. That's earned. And once that trust starts forming, it creates something powerful, momentum before the season even begins. You're not just playing together anymore, you're building something together. And that energy, it spreads. You can even see it with the fan base. The conversation is slowly shifting. It's not just highlights getting attention anymore, it's the process. People are starting to connect the dots, starting to realize that this might actually be turning into something real. Not hype, not noise, something real. But with that shift comes something else, expectation. Because once people start believing, everything gets louder, every throw gets analyzed, every performance gets judged, the spotlight gets heavier. But here's the difference. This version of him looks ready for that. He's already dealt with pressure, already handled criticism, already been in uncomfortable situations, so instead of shrinking under expectations, it feels like he's stepping right into them. And that's the moment where things start to accelerate. Because when belief, preparation, and opportunity all collide at the same time, that's when everything changes fast. And this is the moment where everything starts to flip. Because there's always a point where preparation, confidence, and opportunity collide, and when they do, things don't just improve, they accelerate. Fast. Right now, it feels like he's right on the edge of that moment. You've got the mindset locked in, you've got the work being put in behind the scenes, you've got the situation slowly improving around him, and when all three of those things line up at the same time, that's when players stop being promising and start becoming problems. For everyone. Because in this league, narratives don't change gradually, they flip overnight. One stretch of games, one breakout performance, one moment where everything clicks, and suddenly the conversation is, can he do it anymore? It becomes, how far can he take this? And that's a completely different level of pressure, but also a completely different level of respect. You can already see the setup forming. The doubts are still there, but they're getting quieter. The belief is starting to grow, but it's not fully there yet. It's that in-between stage, the most dangerous stage where people aren't fully convinced, but they're starting to feel like something is coming. And that's where surprises happen. Because when expectations are split like that, when half the people are still questioning and the other half are starting to believe, it creates the perfect environment for a breakout. No one is fully prepared, no one is fully ready, and then it hits. And everything changes. Wins start stacking, performances get sharper, confidence grows even more. And just like that, the same voices that were doubting start shifting their tone. It happens every time. But what makes this situation different is how it's being built. This isn't hype-driven, it's not loud, it's not forced, it's steady, it's consistent. It's happening behind the scenes, piece by piece, day by day. And that kind of buildup usually leads to something real. Because when a player combines discipline, experience, and that level of focus, the jump isn't random, it's earned. And if it all connects the way it's starting to look, then this won't just be a solid season. This will be the moment everything changes. And now it all comes down to this. Because at a certain point, none of the clips, none of the training, none of the speculation matters anymore. It stops being about what could happen and starts being about what actually shows up on the field. That's the reality check. Everything we've talked about, the mindset shift, the silent work, the improvements, the pieces coming together, it all leads to one moment. When the season starts and there's nowhere left to hide behind potential. It becomes real. Because in this league, opinions don't last long, they get replaced by film, by stats, by wins, and once that happens, narratives don't slowly fade, they collapse. Fast. The same people questioning will start adjusting. The same conversations will start changing tone. What used to sound like doubt suddenly turns into curiosity, then respect, then expectation. That's how quickly things flip. But here's the part that makes this situation different. If the preparation we're seeing right now actually translates, then this isn't just going to be a small step forward. This is the kind of shift that changes everything, not just for him, but for the entire team around him. Because quarterbacks like this don't just improve quietly, they elevate everything. The offense moves differently, the energy changes, confidence spreads, and once that momentum builds, it's hard to stop. And that's why this moment matters so much. Because right now, it's still in that early phase, still building, still forming, not loud, not fully proven, but real enough that you can feel it coming. And when that moment finally hits, when preparation meets opportunity, there won't be any more debate left. No more what if. No more can he. Just results. And if those results match what's been building behind the scenes, then everything we're seeing right now, the silence, the work, the focus, is going to make perfect sense in hindsight. So the real question is whether the potential is there. It's whether you're paying attention before the rest of the world catches up.